Space Marines are mad OP. They're kind of the meta of single player, and then they're incorporated quite heavily in multiplayer as well. But single player, they're at the most optimal. And I made a video on that. The video is in the top right. It's like there. So watch the first video. This will make more sense. But there has been a bit of a breakthrough. A bit of a whoopsie, should I say. Because I messed up and I should have included this as part of the video. But why not have a part 2? And we're now going to test out the viability of armor, but not with regular tanks or flame tanks. We're going to do that with SPGs, tank destroyers, and anti-air. I think, for the most part, it's going to blow all of these out of the water. We will have the new king of the most efficient Space Marine armor ever by the end of this video. All of these useless. We're heading towards a new meta. Alrighty then, so this was kind of the basic light boy that I started off with at the very beginning. So I believe it was this one, the no tech one. It was reflecting at the very start of the game what technology would have access to. Therefore, we're going to build this, but we're going to make it in the variant form of either a tank destroyer, anti-air, or an SPG. So starting from the technology at the very start of the game, in Hearts of Iron 4, as Germany, we're going to make those 3 tanks once again. In summary, riveted armor, wheeled suspension, diesel engine, max out the armor, heavy machine gun, 1-man turret, and sloped armor. Can't go very fast, so boom, speed. Is that enough? How come this one moves faster than the previous one? Oh, this is a basic light chassis, that's why. And this is the light. Then we're going to go for the most up-to-date 1936 heavy, which in this case is the basic chassis. Same again, heavy machine gun, smallest possible, cheapest turret, slope those armors, cheapest possible suspension, riveted, diesel, whack on that armor, and then whack on the speed so we can actually go. For the sake of efficiency, though, I think it would be better off to have the diesel, and therefore you end up with this, which overall is more cost efficient, and it doesn't go over 100 reliability. So this is a slight improvement over the previous design. It's less consistent, but overall, it's that sweet spot where gasoline is ever so slightly more effective than diesel, just based on the amount of reliability you end up with at the very end. And then finally, the medium. The medium is a bit of a difficult one because in the game, I use an interwar medium because that's the only one you have available at the start of the game, because it's not until 1938 that you get the medium 1. And there we go. That's what we end up with, the medium. Just to clarify, we want to stack as much armor as we can on a basic infantry division. That is the objective. Remember, not always a like for like, because remember, this is light tank 2, technically 2 steps away from the interwar. This is 1 away from the interwar, and this is the interwar. We're using the equipment we have available to us in 1936. Once again, as we move through time to 1938, 1939, 40, 41, 42, we'll use the retrospective chassis in that case, and we can see if the medium tank, as in the previous test, does as well in future. And there we go. The beginning has already been established. The might, the light, the medium, and the heavy. The good, the bad, and the ugly, which is very relevant because they're actually in order. Good, bad, ugly. Huh. So boom, let us return to the graph. So these were the results based on those 3 tanks I just constructed there. So as a part of the previous test, which I'm going to try and recreate, is we use the infantry division that you start the game with, and we just add it on as an actual physical battalion to get a reflection of how much armor you would get. So in this case, we'll see if there's get the same result. Light tank, the light tank armor will be 10.7 if added onto this division. 10.7, that's correct, that number here. And then we have to put the cost per battalion. The cost per battalion is 216. And then the end result, the actual number that we actually care the most about, is this end number here. And this is the number of the ratio of how many tanks are required to be a part of the battalion, because it varies. So in this case, if we click here, you can see that a light tank uses 60, a medium tank uses 50, and then a single battalion of heavies uses 40. So you have to take into account the actual ratio of the production cost per unit of tank to get the realistic number to see how cost effective that armor is added on to that said division. That is all the stupid science and the prep out the way. Let's actually get into the nitty gritty. Let's actually talk about if we make variants of these tanks, such as SPG, tank destroyers, and AA, if they would be more cost effective than what we're doing. There might be some surprise results here. My understanding is some of these models are more cost effective. However, we might get some shock results. Being that the test that I did were all tanks that had machine guns, it might actually create some wonky results, because remember, the heavy machine gun is not really the best turret in the game. We use that to try and bring the price down to get the most effectiveness out of the armor that we're using as a part of the division. Okay, let's actually get to it. So 1936, light SPG, light tank destroyer, and then light AA. We'll make variations of each. So first of all, we're going to add on the cheapest SPG. This is going to create a little bit wonky results because the cheapest SPG, the close support gun, is actually quite expensive. Production cost of 4. So we're going with a production cost of 3.6. Adding this on, it's a production cost of 6.4. So it's almost doubling the cost of the tank. And with that in mind, we're going to have to add on more speed to this tank to make it move because this turret is so heavy, it's slowing down the tank even more. Next, we're going to make an SPG tank destroyer. Oh, I realized I made a mistake. Just going back, I have to change it to a light SP artillery. As you can see, it makes an impact on these amounts, but that's not the big impacts we were worrying about. The big impacts it has on the division itself is it changes the amount needed for one battalion, which is really important to go back to. Boom, artillery. And here it is, an actual piece of artillery. Next one is the tank destroyer, TD. And then we need to add a tank destroyer gun on here. We have to specifically select a module that's a tank destroyer, which is a tank destroyer turret. And we don't actually have one at the start of the game. So let's cheese one in. And the very first technology for that is the PAK-36. And that unlocks the basic high velocity cannon. It's the cheapest one in the game. Add on the basic high velocity cannon, adding heart attack and adding loads of piercing too. Once again, it's a little bit heavy, so we're gonna have to increase the engine, which slightly increases the cost for the vehicle by a very small increment. And then we have to specifically designate it is going to be a tank destroyer, the light TD. And last but definitely not least, the basic anti-air gun. In this case, we don't need to add on the extra engine because it is just the right speed to move. We're doing away with speed and a lot of the other stats, as well as hardness, I suppose, to a certain degree, because the SPG variants have less hardness overall. We're also really primarily focusing this on the most cost effectiveness for armor, adding on to the Stead infantry division at the very start of the game for Germany. Boom, and select the anti-air. And save. And here we go. The 3 models. So this is all 1936 technology. Be aware you've got to research the anti-tank gun to get access to the first high velocity gun for the tank destroyer. That's the only thing that's noteworthy. But everything else, these are a fair, accurate representation of the cheapest possible models of SPG, tank destroyer, and AA. And you can see the cost is interesting too. SPG 6.4 production cost, 5.6 for the light tank destroyer, and the light AA is 4.8. So the winner definitely there is the production cost. So production cost per battalion, let's enter those numbers in. All right, let's add it on to the division then. So first of all, add on an armored battalion, and we're going to go with first of all the SPG. A single SPG artillery battalion is a total of, you can see on the right there, 50 units of light SPG, which has a direct like-for-like production cost, as you can see there, of 324. As you can see, it's not doing very well because the regular light definitely outclasses it. Next up, the tank destroyer has a production cost of 284. The AA has a production cost of extra 172.80. Now we need to look at how much armor we gain for adding these on. The SPG will add on armor of 10.7. So it's just the threshold of 10 armor to make it actually worthwhile, which in this case, when we use the example of a light tank recon adding on as a support company, the armor amount was just way too low to even care about it. So we just threw that out and we didn't even look at the numbers for it. Okay, the armor for the tank destroyer is 10.7. Why, it's exactly the same. And surprisingly, I've just scanned over all of them and they're all adding the exact amount of armor. Because if you think about it, changing the variant of the tank is actually making no difference whatsoever to the amount of armor it's got. They've all got the exact same armor stats. I would thought that the proportion of them as a part of the division will have an impact on the overall amount of armor. But in this circumstance, it's actually not. As you can see, an AA only uses 36 pieces. Tank destroyer uses 50. And also SPG uses 50. So AA massively comes out on top here. So they're all 10.7. And here are the results. So remember, the lowest number is the most effective. So the SPG at 30.28, that is the highest number we've ever had so far. Interesting. Tank destroyer is 26.54. Also one of the highest numbers we've had so far. And also the 1936 light AA is 16.15, which makes it the second place, just behind the 1936 medium with 1936 tech. There are some issues though with this result, because remember, this is using a heavy machine gun turret, which, as you can imagine, doesn't reflect or benefit the division as helpfully as some AA. So you could argue this number of 16.5 gives you more bang for your buck. Of course, it results in the net cost being higher, but you're adding AA to the division. In that case, could you say it's actually cheaper because you're not actually having to pay the cost of 80 production costs for the support AA because it's got some air attack added onto the division itself. That's a decent argument to say that. I'm not going to include this as part of the results because I don't want to complicate things, but I think that's really interesting to see that the AA, however, isn't the cheapest, but it adds a little bit of functionality to the division as well. And listen, AA is one of those really important stats when it comes down to defending against air power and air superiority and cast striking. Second note, be aware that light tanks, medium tanks, and heavy tanks have more hardness. The only one here that doesn't take a penalty to its hardness, I believe, is the tank destroyer. So the light AA has 35% hardness, very low hardness. Hardness is an important stat as a part of division. Definitely as a part of a Space Marine because it reduces the amount of soft attack damage that infantry division will take, that Space Marine division will take. The SPG has a hardness of 35 as well, so equally low. And then finally, the tank destroyer has hardness of 56%, which I believe is actually lower than the base amount for a light tank. Let's have a look. Yeah, it is less than that. It's 80%. So be aware, the tank destroyer suffers a smaller penalty to hardness compared to the massive penalty that the AA and the SPG will suffer. But be aware that it will nerf the amount of output that you get and effectiveness overall out of the Space Marine division. But remember, the objective today is to try and find out, is there more a cost-effective solution than if we use a tank variant? So let's do it with the medium tank too. And here we go, the medium, and the medium, all the medium variants. So remember, in our original test, the most bang for your buck when it came down to armor and production cost was the medium tank. So this is going to create a really interesting result. They're all adding on the same level of armor. However, the big difference is the production cost. All right, the results. From least to effective out of the variants is the SPG at 23.01. The second most effective is the medium tank destroyer at 20.48. And the most effective, wow, and it is the new king of 1936 tech. And it is 12.74, beating the medium tank with no tech and the heavy machine gun by 1.5 production cost. Wow. So the armor amounts are exactly the same, 17.8. The amount of armor that you get as a part of the chassis and the amount of armor you can add onto the division is exactly the same. It's no different. So you're getting the most bang for your buck when it comes down to the AA just because you use less of them per battalion. But you've got the added bonus, which I'm going to pop the stars on here, to tell you that you're taking advantage of some air attack. This division will benefit from 16 air attack. And to be fair, that's enough air attack to last you for the whole game as a part of a single player AI game. Of course, the downsides here are pretty clear. Look at the amount of hardness, 6%. In comparison to a regular medium tank, we should be getting 8%. You know what? Now I say that and I see that out loud, it's not really much of a big difference. It's actually making very little difference. The only way it's going to make a bigger difference is if you start to stack on more of these. Let's just say we get in a whole row of these. Regular mediums is going to equate to 30% hardness. That's enough hardness to make a significant difference of an infantry division fighting an infantry division, where if these were medium AAs, the hardness would be 23%. It's still significant. That 7% is making a lot of difference in the long run. Just a heads up. I'm letting you guys aware of the downsides of this overall. It's not just all clear upsides. The heavies are here. And these are the models. Let's add it on to this infantry division, specifically this infantry division. And the result is... in third place is the SPG at 23.7. In second place is the tank destroyer at 22.1. Practically the same, so close. And then the winner, 18.66. Not the winner of winner when it comes down to overall cost effectiveness, but overall you're getting 25 armor, and it is more effective than a regular heavy tank by a very smallest of 0.4 production cost. So the winner for the 1936 category is the medium AA. Now, I will argue here the production difference here is not massive. 12.74 compared to a score of 13.9. I'll admit that margin is quite close, and it does actually make me feel like, is it even worth your time to care too much about that? And I'm going to say yes. And the reason why you should care is you gain air attack from the medium AA division. And that's going to go a really long way to help you out in the long run. Should we do the 1939s as well, guys? For the most part, I think the 1943 one is actually too far ahead of time for us to actually care. But I think we should be able to get a good enough pattern if we do the light, mediums, and heavies from 1939. Yep, let's do it. Tanks, 1939 tanks. So we need this one, this one, this one. That's it. I guess we get the engine as well. Light. Okay. One-man turret. We can now add on skirts and we can add on sloped armor. We're going to do anti-air to begin with. We can do light AA V2. We're going to make it cheaper as well by going wheeled suspension. We've got the option to do welded armor now. And we add on all the armor points. And my goodness, there's a lot of armor to be added on. In this case, we have to do diesel because otherwise the reliability is going to be atrocious. And there we go. 73% reliability is just okay. It's not amazing. It's just okay. And then we make it an anti-air. Yes, the first one. We're going to go V2. We'll make this an SPG. Has to add a little bit more speed onto it. Otherwise, it won't move. Light. Tank Destroyer V2. So as we showed before, this is going to add on the same armor for all of them. So first of all, light SPG 1939 has a production cost of 324. The anti-air has a production cost of 324. The light SPG 1939 has a production cost of 555. And the tank destroyer has a production cost of 505. Wow, those two are getting close. And here we go. And the result is... in third place is the SPG. No surprises there. 26.5. And the tank destroyer at 24.1. And... the winner is the light 1939 light AA at 15.5. Is that a new record? No. The lowest was the 1939 medium. Let's talk about the medium now. And this is probably going to be the most spiciest result because it was the winner as a part of a regular medium. The big difference is going to be is whether the cost of the turrets is going to push it over the edge and make it non-cost effective. The medium SPG is 45.6. The tank destroyer is 45.6. And the anti-air is 45.6. However, the production cost is very, very different. The medium tank destroyer has a production cost of 610.50. The medium SPG has a production cost of 665.50. And the anti-air has a production cost of 396. Once again, the SPG and the tank destroyer costs overall are always just so close. The result is the SPG at 14.5, the tank destroyer at 13.3, and the anti-air at 8.68. Is that a brand new winner in the 1939 category? Let's have a look. And it is by a substantial amount as well. The cheapest medium 939 was 10.25. And remember, I'll say this again, you're not only getting a cheaper overall battalion, you're also taking advantage of potentially better stats because you're getting AA added onto your division. And as default, you need AA on your division, which is overall the most cost-effective way of adding AA on. I mean, that's not true. It's not the most cost-effective way of doing it. Adding support AA is probably going to be cheaper, but overall with that, you're going to get more stats, and of course, you're going to get that lovely, juicy 45.6 armor added on to an infantry division, which is a very high amount of armor for a medium in 1936. Do you guys want to see 1943 as well? I'm not doing 1930. I'm not doing 1943. There's definitely a pattern here, and the pattern is the AI comes out on top in most cases because it requires less units as a part of a battalion. So if we were to recreate this result for 1943 tanks, I think probably what we'd see is the heavy AA tank is probably the most effective overall, with the medium heavy just being just behind it. Yeah, the 1943 heavy AA tank will come out on top. It'll be the number one, followed very closely by the medium 1943, which is pretty much the similar pattern that we already had before. Tank destroyers are useful because they preserve hardness, but overall, they're not really the best way of adding armor onto a division. SPGs will add lots of soft attack, but once again, be aware they're not the best way of adding on armor. To be fair, they're actually probably the worst ways of adding armor because they're just the least cost-effective overall. But when it comes to 1936 and 939, the winners are definitely the AA. You're going to gain AA and air attack onto your divisions, which is incredibly useful, particularly early game as well. It counters the cast spam, which the AI does quite frequently. Overall, it adds the same amount of armor, whether it's an AA or a regular, so it's a win-win in that situation as well. In 1943, the most cost-effective one by the smallest of margins, by a whisker, is the heavy AA 1943, but then just behind it will be the 1943 medium AA as well. So you've really got two decisions, really. Do you want to benefit from the best armor overall in the game by just sticking to mediums throughout the entirety of the game with a very small drop-off at the very end of the game? Or do you want to invest into heavies at the very beginning, getting less bang for your buck, but then when you get into 1943, your heavies are going to be the best and the best, giving you a very slight edge over the mediums in that period. That is the decision you've got to make. And I think the safest option for early game, mid game, and also for the most part late game is going to be the medium AA, giving you overall air attack and also giving you the most armor overall. With the downsides of you are going to suffer with less hardness on your division. Is it worth it? As you can see, overall, you're not losing that much hardness overall, particularly if you've got several battalions added onto the division. But if one battalion of armor is added on, it doesn't even have that much hardness anyway. But overall, it still will add a reasonable amount of armor. And there we go, guys. Is there anything I've missed out on here? Any mistakes I've made? I'm only human. I'm not perfect. Please let me know in the comments below, and I'll do my absolute best to correct that potentially in future videos. I love you, and I hope you love me too. Please love me. If you want more Hoi 4 content and you want to enjoy more of what I do, give this video a click. This is right up your alley. I'll see you soon.